Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today, well, it's pretty profound, actually. We want to fundamentally change how you view your social circle. Because, when researchers look at the factors that truly predict how long you'll live, they find something. Honestly, it's shocking.
It really is.
Your social relationships, or maybe the lack of them, they don't just nudge the needle. They rival some of the biggest, most established risk factors for early mortality.
That's absolutely right. And we're not talking about some kind of soft benefit here, like, oh, it's nice to have friends.
Right.
No, we're talking about an independent influence on longevity. Its magnitude is comparable to clinical factors. Think cigarette smoking, high blood pressure, obesity,
Wow.
physical inactivity. Social connection is right up there in the same league.
That's just astonishing to me. I mean, we're constantly told, eat your vegetables, go for a run.
Yeah, the usual suspect.
But socializing, we still kind of treat that like a hobby, something nice to do if you have time.
Exactly. And that perception, it really needs to change. So our goal today is to move past that simple idea, having friends is good.
Okay.
We want to unpack the details, the nuances. We've pulled from these huge meta-analyses, really deep lifespan studies, and some fascinating research on centenarians.
Ah, the super ager.
Right. And even cellular biology. We want to figure out which relationships truly matter most. At what age do they become critical? And maybe most importantly, how do these connections literally translate into measurable biological changes inside your body?
Okay, let's definitely unpack that, starting with just the sheer power of connection itself.
Yeah.
That major meta-analytic review you mentioned, the one combining data from, nearly 150 studies?
That's the one.
It really hammered this home, didn't it? Reinforcing the social relationships have this independent influence on mortality.
It's the foundational finding, really. It's robust, it's consistent, and it applies across different populations all over the globe. And when we measure this effect, researchers generally look at, two distinct dimensions of relationships.
Okay, and these are the structural versus functional divides, all right?
Correct. The structural definition is kind of the easy one. It's the physical network around you, the sheer existence of ties.
Like how many people?
Exactly. It's quantifiable. Are you married? How many friends are in your network? Do you belong to a religious group or maybe a book club? It's like taking a census of your social life.
Right, it's counting the number of chairs at your table, basically.
Perfectly put. Whereas the functional measure, that's about the quality of the tie. It's the content.
How it feels.
Yes. Do you feel understood? Do you get genuine emotional support? Do you perceive those people as, reliable safety nets? This is much more about the subjective feeling of being protected and supported.
And we can see both of these, the structural and the functional, really playing out when researchers study those famous blue zones.
Ah, yes. The longevity hotspots.
Right, those areas like Ikaria in Greece or Okinawa in Japan where people consistently live into their late 90s and beyond.
Yeah, and the science there is pretty clear on the ratio. The Danish twin study, for instance, established that only about 20%, maybe a fifth, of how long you live is dictated purely by genetics.
Only 20%.
Yeah, that leaves a huge 80% down to lifestyle and environment. And the absolute foundation of those Power 9 principles they identified in these long-lived communities, it's anchored in connections.
Okay, so what are those specific connection principles? There were 3, right?
That's right. First, loved ones first. This means really prioritizing time and effort on immediate family, spouses, partners, children, and also ensuring aging parents are kept nearby, integrated into life.
Makes sense. What's the second?
Second is belong. They found that consistently participating in some kind of faith-based community is associated with living significantly longer. We're talking between 4 and maybe even 14 years longer on average.
4 to 14 years. Just from belonging to a group like that.
The community tie seems incredibly powerful. It provides structure, support, shared values.
Okay. And the third one, you called it right tribe. I think this one feels particularly relevant for everyone listening today.
It really is. And it's pure strategic environmental engineering, essentially. Behaviors, whether they're positive or negative, they're contagious.
Like catching a cold.
Sort of. Studies have shown that smoking, obesity, even happiness, they can all spread through social networks. The people in the blue zones, they don't just rely on individual willpower to eat well or stay active. No, they naturally curate their social circles, their right tribe, in ways that reinforce healthy habits. They're surrounded by people who support their way of life, making the healthy choice the easy choice.
That structural setup, that environment, it seems like it would automatically favor family connections. But this leads us to a really fascinating part of the research, maybe even a bit controversial. It challenges that traditional hierarchy we often just assume. When we dig into lifespan studies, especially those focusing on older adulthood, the evidence for friends becomes surprisingly dominant over family.
It absolutely challenges the family default assumption. When you track the impact of different relationship types across the lifespan in longitudinal studies.
So following people over many years.
Exactly. They find that valuing friendships is related to better health and better functioning, specifically among older adults. The influence of family ties, well, it tended to be static, or in some cases, it even diminished with age, while the power of friends actually grew.
Okay, I really want to focus on that Australian longitudinal study of aging you mentioned. It tracked people aged 70 and up for a decade, right?
Yes, a very important study.
What were their core findings on survival rates, specifically comparing family versus friends for these older adults?
Well, they found that having a strong network of friends and confidants significantly improved the chances of survival over those 10 years. That's maybe not too surprising. But here's the kicker.
Okay.
Close contact with children and other relatives had little impact on those survival rates.
Wait, little impact compared to friends.
Very little impact on actual survival odds for that 70-plus group. And the beneficial effects of friends persisted even when major life changes happened, like losing a spouse. Friends stepped up.
So let me get this straight. For someone who's, say, 75 years old, having a good group of close friends is measurably more important for their physical survival than how often they see their own kids.
According to that study's findings, yes. It's a direct challenge to the cultural expectation that family is always your primary safety net, especially in later life.
Why? Why would that be the case? What did the researchers think was going on?
Well, it seems to come back to that distinction between choice and necessity. Researchers call it the selectivity advantage of friendship.
Selectivity advantage.
Yeah. As we age, our time and our emotional energy, they become more finite resources, right? So we tend to prioritize interactions that really maximize our well-being. Friendships are fundamentally chosen relationships.
You opt in.
Exactly. You intentionally invest in those that are supportive, uplifting, that make you feel good. Removing difficult or strained family relationships, on the other hand. Well, that's extremely hard, sometimes impossible.
Okay. So friends are the relationships we actively curate to enhance our lives, whereas family can often feel like more of an obligation, even if it's a loving one.
That seems to be the dynamic. And those chosen positive friendships provide essential, flexible support, especially when other key relationships, like with a spouse or even grown children, might diminish or end.
Friends fill the gaps.
They can, yes. When you choose your relationship, you're proactively choosing your support system.
But that focus on choice, it raises a really critical question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What happens when we choose wrong? Or when a chosen relationship goes sour?
Relationship strain.
Exactly. If quality is tied to this intentionality, what happens when those strong chosen connections introduce strain? Does that strain hit differently depending on whether it's from family or friends?
That's a crucial point. The impact of strain can be highly toxic. And unfortunately, yes, the cost of relationship strain can absolutely outweigh the benefits of support. That longitudinal study tracking older adults, it specifically looked at strain coming from spouses, from children, and from friends. Now, you might assume spousal strain, or maybe strain with kids, would be the most damaging physically.
Yeah, that seems intuitive.
But the research showed a surprising result.
And what was that surprise?
Only strain from friendships predicted a greater number of chronic illnesses over a 6-year period.
Only from friends, not spouses or children.
Strain from spouses and children was associated with lower subjective well-being, feeling unhappy, anxious, stressed out. But the toxic cost of friendship strain was uniquely tied to objective physical health decline, more chronic illness.
Wow. That's profound. It suggests that the relationship type we have the highest emotional investment in, precisely because it was chosen, also carries the highest biological cost when it turns negative.
It speaks volumes about the emotional weight, the biological weight we give those voluntary ties. Choose your friends carefully, and maybe even more importantly, manage the strain within those friendships.
Okay, this research also paints a picture of how the physiological impact of isolation isn't static across our lives.
Right.
It seems to hit us particularly hard at certain ages. Tell us about this life course of isolation idea.
Yeah, it's not just about if you're connected, but when. Researchers found that the benefits of social integration, being connected, they operate across the entire lifespan. It's like a dose-response thing, more connection, generally better health.
Okay.
However, social isolation seems to pose these really acute physiological risks at two specific life stages. First, look at adolescence.
Teenagers.
Right. Social isolation was found to increase the risk of inflammation by the same magnitude as physical inactivity.
Get out. Being isolated as a teen is as bad for your inflammatory markers as being a total couch potato.
According to that research, yes. Think about that. We put so much societal focus on getting kids to run around, play sports.
Right, PE class, team sports.
But how much focus goes into making sure they don't feel profoundly alone or excluded? That isolation carries a measurable physical risk.
That's a wake-up call. And what about the other end of the lifespan?
In old age, so late adulthood, the effect of social isolation on the risk of developing hypertension, high blood pressure, was so severe that it exceeded that of clinical risk factors like diabetes.
Exceeded diabetes?
Yes. Isolation acts as an incredibly potent risk multiplier in later life. It shows that if you don't keep that right tribe, that supportive network, active and healthy, your biological systems can suffer almost immediately.
It really underscores the need to be intentional about maintaining connections throughout life, but especially in those vulnerable periods.
Absolutely. And there was an interesting finding about midlife, too. In one middle-aged sample, the sheer number of connections, the structural ties, didn't show quite as strong a protective effect. This might suggest that in midlife, when maybe people often have larger networks through work and family anyway, the quality or the function of those ties becomes even more critical than just the quantity.
Interesting. So structure matters maybe more at the extremes of the lifespan, while quality is key in the middle.
That could be one interpretation, yeah. It's complex.
Okay, let's pivot now to the how. How does this all get under the skin, as researchers say? How do we go from, quick chat with a trusted friend to an actual measurable change in our biology? What's the mechanism?
The primary mechanism scientists talk about is the stress buffering hypothesis.
Stress buffering, okay.
Simply put, social support, feeling connected, feeling secure, acts as an innate safety signal for your brain and body.
A safety signal, like an all clear.
Exactly. When you receive that signal, it tells your brain to inhibit your body's defense motivational system. That's your fight or flight response. It dials it down.
Okay, and what specific system does that safety signal regulate? You mentioned the HPA axis earlier. For those of us who haven't thought about biology class in a while, what is that system, and why is cortisol considered the bad guy we need to control?
Right. The HPA axis, that stands for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. It's the main system controlling your body's reaction to stress. When you perceive a threat, the HPA axis floods your system with hormones, the key one being cortisol.
The stress hormone.
That's the one. Now, a burst of cortisol is useful if you need to, run from a predator, quick energy, heightened focus. But chronically high levels of cortisol, day in and day out, that's destructive. It leads to inflammation, high blood pressure, suppressed immunity, a whole cascade of negative effects.
So social support essentially acts like a handbrake on that runaway cortisol system.
That's a great way to put it. And this entire process seems to be strongly mediated by the oxytocin system.
Oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone or love drug, right?
Yeah, those are maybe slight oversimplifications. Oxytocin is released during positive social interactions. Think physical touch, mutual grooming in animals, even just sharing a meal or having a trusting conversation. Its release is directly associated with the downregulation of those stress hormones, like cortisol.
Okay, so oxytocin helps calm the HPA axis. Does it only kick in when a stressor is already present? Like, you get stressed, you seek support, oxytocin is released, you calm down.
That's part of it, the buffering effect. But here's where it gets really interesting. Studies suggest oxytocin also acts as a general health promotion mechanism, even when there isn't an active stressor.
How so?
Just being in a supportive, bonded social environment seems to provide these chronic, low-level safety signals. This can reduce your baseline levels of stress hormones and inflammation, proactively maintaining health rather than just reacting to threats. It's like ongoing biological maintenance fueled by connection.
Wow. So good relationships aren't just fixing problems, they're preventing them at a baseline level.
That seems to be the case. It's a proactive health benefit.
And if chronic stress is this major anti-longevity force, we should be able to see its footprint directly on our cells, right? You mentioned biomarkers of aging, specifically telomeres. Can you remind us what telomeres are?
Sure. Telomeres are protective caps on the ends of your chromosomes. Think of them like the little plastic tips on shoelaces.
Okay, aglets.
Exactly. They protect the important genetic information inside. Every time your cells divide, these telomere caps shorten just a tiny bit. Eventually, when they get too short, the cell can no longer divide properly or it dies. This shortening process is linked to increased risk of age-related diseases and just overall aging.
So shorter telomeres generally mean older biological age, more wear and tear.
That's the general idea.
And what does the evidence tell us about the link between stress, particularly perceived stress, and the length of these crucial biological caps?
The meta-analytic findings here are quite clear and concerning. Higher levels of age-adjusted perceived stress were significantly associated with reduced telomere length.
So feeling stressed actually speeds up this cellular aging clock.
It appears so. Chronic psychological stress leaves a measurable mark, a literal shrinking, on the cellular structures linked to aging. It's like it's biologically shortening your fuse.
That really drives home the physical reality of stress and, by extension, the physical benefit of stress buffering social connections. Which brings us perfectly to the actionable takeaways.
Right. What can we do about this?
Exactly. If we accept that our social environment is genuinely as potent a health factor as diet or exercise, how do we use this knowledge? How
Yeah.
can we, literally engineer a longer, healthier life through connection?
Well, I think we have to revisit that core finding from the Blue Zones research. Longevity, for them, comes less from heroic individual effort and willpower.
Like forcing yourself to go to the gym every day.
Right, and more from living in an engineered environment where the healthy choice is the easy choice, often the social choice. You don't necessarily have to move to Okinawa.
Phew.
But you can think about changing your life radius. That's the term they use, the environment where you naturally spent the bulk of your time. How can you tweak that environment to make connection easier, more automatic?
Do we have a good example of a community actually applying this idea successfully? Not just observing it, but implementing it.
Absolutely. The case of Albert Lea, Minnesota is a fantastic real-world laboratory for this. They launched a project based explicitly on the Blue Zones principles.
What do they do?
They focused on optimizing both the physical, built environment and the social networks simultaneously. So they made the the easy option, things like connecting sidewalks, building a nice trail around the lake, making it pleasant and easy to walk.
Okay, infrastructure changes.
But crucially, they paired that with social engineering.
Visual engineering, how?
They actively set up community walking groups, and they called them walking moai, deliberately adopting the Okinawan term for a social support group, a group that meets for a common purpose.
Ah, so they built the structure and the social incentive together.
Precisely. This addressed both the structural tie, giving people a group to belong to, and the functional tie, engaging in a shared, supportive, healthy activity together.
Brilliant. And what was the measurable outcome for the people who participated in Albert Lea?
It was pretty remarkable. For participants in the project, their engagement in these changes, the environmental tweaks, the walking moai led to an estimated average life expectancy gain of 3.2 years.
3.2 years, just from that community effort.
That was the estimate. It powerfully showed that strategically building social networks, creating that right tribe within a supportive environment is a scalable, community-based intervention. It naturally supports healthy behaviors without relying solely on individual willpower. That's a phenomenal return on investment for a community.
It really speaks to the power of the environment almost overriding individual struggle. If your tribe makes the healthy thing easy and social.
You're much more likely to succeed. It becomes the path of least resistance.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you, the listener, sitting here with us? We've established pretty clearly, I think, that social connections aren't just emotional comforts, they're biological necessities. Their impact on your health and longevity rivals that of major, well-known health risk factors.
Yeah.
But the really surprising, maybe even challenging takeaway for many is the unique power of the safety net you consciously choose your friends.
Especially in later life, yes. That chosen support system seems particularly potent for longevity.
And the deepest implication from all this research, perhaps, is thinking about our social support figures not just as people we like, but as, what was the phrase, biologically prepared safety stimuli?
Exactly. Built into our evolutionary programming. They literally have the power to halt or slow down the biological process of accelerated aging that's driven by chronic stress. Feeling safe and connected is protective at a cellular level.
So here's the final thought for you to take away. Given that the science clearly shows social isolation can impact your physical health biomarkers, things like inflammation, blood pressure, even your telomeres potentially as powerfully as having a diagnosed disease.
It's a sobering thought.
It really is. Ask yourself this. What one small, intentional change can you make this week to maximize the safety signals coming from your own right tribe? Who should you choose to invest a little time or energy in this week?
Remember, the research suggests the most potent safety net, especially as life goes on, is the one you intentionally weave yourself. Choose wisely. Invest intentionally.
Thank you for diving deep with us today. We'll see you next time.